have to follow the idea of persuading your mind, because to change a worldview, a paradigm, is a matter of persuasion. I remember, because we people do not know God's truth. We cannot know God's truth. The only thing is that once it is revealed, we have to install it in our minds. That's it. So we should not trust our common sense. And for instance, I remember the case of a guy who was a believer, and he was a musician. He really was a believer. He seemed to love God. I don't know what happened in his marriage, but it ended up in a very bitter divorce, very bitter, and he got bitter against God. Not only against his wife, but against God. And he went to a psychologist who blamed everything to God. So she was going to help him to wash his brains so he won't believe in God. And amazingly, he's living probably 15 or 20 years away from God. So what I say is that men cannot do anything else than to follow truth. Once it is revealed, he has to live it. He cannot trust his common sense, like saying that truth is a natural thing he can do. So sometimes you have to do not too natural things to persuade your mind. For instance, that's what it says. For instance, in every principle, what you can do, you follow every principle. Let's say you study that in the Bible. Okay, next thing is find out in reality. Find it out in reality. In the newspapers, then you collect the newspapers. You do a lot of work, okay? I found a book that says the same thing, okay? I read it. What I'm doing is I'm persuading my mind, okay? Okay, next step is after reading, watching videos, or whatever I can find, I have gone through a lot of this information. Next thing is I make a personal commitment in this, and I can even do more. I can do a personal commitment, a family commitment if I am a father, and maybe a church or community commitment. And I will write down what it is. And I'll do it, because then if you don't do it, okay, there's nothing that is going to work with you. You have to do it, and then you have to expect God to fill with grace when you do that, because it's a step of faith. When you do something that you are not sure, I don't know if I will say the neighbor that I had to do this, but I'm sorry. But you're going to take a step of faith. Then you are inviting God to act with you. And that's the part that is hard to explain people, because they all just see, okay, I have to read that, I have to do that. Because they don't know that what the Bible promised is that you will know God. And the Bible says that to your faith add discipline, to discipline knowledge, to knowledge love. It goes that way. It says, if you do those things, a wide open way will be open to the kingdom of the Lord. That's what it says. And it says, because people who don't do that, normally they go back to their own sins. You will never slide back. Slide back? Is that right? Yeah. Like,
so once again, tell me the steps, because I thought that was really good.
Okay, try to follow the ideas that can persuade your mind. When I say, when I say persuasion, I mean those things that make sense, help you to make sense, but don't get tired of that. Don't never say, oh, that's enough. Okay? For instance, look, this in this curriculum, principle-centered curriculum, what happened with people is one of the nice things about this is that how mind works. Okay, so when you show a person a principle, biblical principle, and you show him this logic that truth produces life and lies produces death, and how he has been living a lie, and that's why in his society this has been destructive. When he can reason that way, you know, what probably something like this could probably happen. He will say, "Oh, I'm tired of your teachings," and he leaves. But once he heard that, in his mind, this logical thing will be working subconsciously, and one day he will find himself, you know, questioning many things of his own life. You have to trust that. I mean, logic is, in mind, it has a tremendous power. Look, I'm going to tell you this. While I was in FH, there were many people who didn't like these ideas. And sometimes they have to come to the teaching just because that was his job, and they were just like that, you know. And years after that, I found them teaching them. And they told me, you know what? I found people doing so crazy things that all of a sudden, everything you said made sense to me. And I said, I have to help these people because they are just nuts. I mean, it's interesting, but when you teach that something is logical, and they see that logic in their mind, that's it. The mind will always take that option, you know. The important thing is to prove that. So you have to persuade your mind one and over, you know. For instance, if work is sacred, then what happens if we think this other way? I mean, that's nice. And then you read a newspaper, how this strike was this, I don't know, you know. And you read a book, and you see a movie, and you, oh yeah, that's true, this works, you know, one and over. Next step is, okay, I'll do something myself.
This is to make a commitment.
Exactly, make a commitment, first personal commitment, you'll do yourself. Second one, if you're a father, you will make a family commitment. But commitments, the more they look like a culture, something that can culturally be preserved in time, you know, a tradition, a song, I don't know, a celebration of something, a seed project, you know, and you do it again and again, you know, all of a sudden, when you go back to your normal life, you are not the same person, and you don't get back. You don't go back to old habits if you are persistent, you know, because that's the only way in which you change a paradigm. A paradigm is like the military training, you know. If this person was always, you know, sleeping late and getting late to all his commitments, once he goes to the military, that's there. He will be forced in many ways, and when he comes out of 2 years, he will be another person. That's exactly what is going to happen. Very honestly, it is really difficult to move aside of the church because your opportunities just narrow down. But I guess that people that tend to be more intellectually independent, like for instance, there are groups of students or seminaries or Bible schools, places like that. You can find serious people who are really looking for God's truth. And I guess it's much better to get focused on those groups. Yeah, they are there because they want that. But in churches, you know, even the pastor, he doesn't want to move more. You know, he has probably worked hard and he has done so many things. Now you are going to change his gospel. He doesn't want to hear anything like that. Okay, a paradigm. What is a paradigm? A paradigm is a very powerful piece of thinking that is in your mind. But how it gets there? I mean, how it works, how it gets there. It works as a natural part of your life. I mean, I could say, in other words, that the sum of all your paradigms, it's you. It is what you are. You are not anything else, you know, whatever it is. I mean, they are thoughts that mostly work subconsciously, you know, because you don't need to make conscious plans for eating the way you eat, or taking a bath, or doing all the things you do every day. You mostly do make them subconsciously, but what you don't notice that they are strong moral decisions. You don't realize that the nature, the moral nature of our decisions. It is quite interesting. You know, how you talk to your wife, how you got married, how you get to know girls or not, or all those things that you don't pay attention are very strongly moved by your paradigms. How you get your paradigms, a very early age. I mean, when a child comes to the world, imagine someone who never saw the world before, you know, but a child has an incredible intelligence, and his worldview or her worldview acts immediately, and what it's trying to do is to make an interpretation of everything is seen. But it's interesting because you see, let's say, images, you know, your senses just feel. But the brain, what does the brain is make interpretations. Who is your father? Who is your mother? Why she looks different than him? He speaks, the tones of their voices. They are happy. They are fighting. It's amazing, but probably in the 3, 4, 5 years, the child has an interpretation of the whole universe. He doesn't need more. He caught the language, you know. So when you see a little child, 5 years old, you normally what you do is you underestimate him. You think, okay, now you are ready to be educated. Wrong. He's already educated. He is able to make an interpretation of the universe. So he has all his paradigms. The problem is that the place in your brain where your basic paradigms are installed, you know, is a sacred place. They don't change. So if at home they are disorganized, and he grew up in that home, he will be disorganized the rest of his life, probably. You know, if at home you struggle with something, let's say, I don't know, maybe if he says, I don't know, what could happen, you know, this,
I mean, take it to a bad extreme, sexual abuse.
It could be things,
that's apparent.
for instance, how men treat women in his society, you know, what, I mean, having children in every woman is manhood, you know. He will grasp that, and it will become a model in his mind. And next, he will act that way naturally. That's the problem, and that cannot be changed because the first thing is that he's not aware of that. He thinks the universe is that way, you know. And if he takes a plane and lands in another culture, he will say, "These guys are crazy. They have only one wife. You know, they are wasting their time. Why don't, I mean, they won't be able to relate that, you know." But to change is a big problem because it doesn't come just by teaching, by preaching, or by words. It comes only by discipline, by mind persuasion. Yes, mind persuasion. I mean, I say, for instance, like, as I told you, you know, I hated my work. I don't know. I always wanted to leave, but I can't because I need the income. But the Bible says that I should love. I should pray for my boss. That guy, I hate him. And, you know? But the Bible says you should act the other way because your boss is Jesus and your work is a blessing from God. Okay, I will act in opposition to my worldview. But because I'm conscious about this teaching, but I need to persuade my mind one and over, you know. So I persuade it through biblical truth. I understand the consequences of truths and lies. And next thing, I make personal commitments, you know. And I ask God for a lot of grace to do that, you know. And, you know, and if you pray that way, I believe very much God will give you His grace. He He will do amazing things with you. But that's a step of faith. You always need to consider that that's a step of faith. It means God is involved. He will be honored in the end. So you do it one and over, and then you realize that the job was nothing that wrong, and maybe God touches the heart of your boss, and you see God working, you know, because that's what He wants. He wants you to have a biblical mindset, you know. But you should never stop until you see that things are changing, and all of a sudden, you know, you cannot go back to the same person that you were before. Have you seen this movie?
Matrix.
No. Oh well, yes. Matrix is very graphical on this. You know, it's Matrix is more graphical for existentialism. Matrix is exactly what existentialism tries to
Well,
teach.
it's also about paradigm.
Yeah,
About shifting paradigms.
I'm talking about this movie that is about the Jewish Holocaust.
Schindler's
Schindler's
List.
List?
Exactly, Schindler's List. Have you seen this man who was a businessman
Yeah.
who didn't care much about the Jews? He knew it was wrong, but it didn't hurt him. You know, it didn't persuade his mind. And when he began to save the the Jewish families and investing his money and doing this and doing that and save them from the train, it came that night when they honored him for saving his and he suffered a dramatic shift of worldview. And all of a sudden, he began to cry and say, "With this pen made of gold, I could have bought 2 more.
Wow.
And with that car, I could have bought 4 more. Why I didn't do it?" You know, all of a sudden, he was another man. That's a perfect idea of what is a paradigm shift.
Wow.
You know, now that man cannot be the same guy that at the beginning wanted to take advantage of the Jewish suffering. Cannot be. It's impossible. It's another man. Once you replace the idea of your paradigms, your worldview, you are another person because that's what you are. It's not a choice. It's not a choice anymore. You will be that man consciously and subconsciously. But until then, you cannot stop. It's a discipline. Well, it depends of your relationship. But I'm laying on the idea that you have control and you can manage in agreement. You can persuade your family to do things, you know, because I guess that was one of the things that they complain a lot in Food for the Hungry, because we taught these things to the staff, but the wives were at home and in a different story. You know, this is something that it would be very useful if you can leave it with your family. You know, and it's. And again, it's the grace of God. I remember not too long ago, we decided to make some seed projects at home. And there was this family where the parents decided to take control of their family and do seed projects all together. Because we made different groups, but he decided to make a group of his family. He didn't want each one of them to go to a different group. He wanted to make a group himself. And amazing things began with his experience of obeying this thing. And all he and his children could see how God was working just the way the plan did. I mean, for instance, Bob says that if you make a seed project for the community, one of the things that could happen is the community gets impressed and they will probably join you in your effort. And that's what he did. He decided to clean the sewage, for raining, which was a whole mess in the whole neighborhood. But there was one in the front of his door, and he, very enthusiastic, took his family, and they got all the gloves and things like that, and began to work, and the neighbors began to pass, and the children, they were alert because they were with the cellular phone ready to take pictures. And there was a man, "Oh, nice what you're doing. Come on, man, I wish I have known. Okay, congratulations, you're doing great. The first thing they received was congratulations. And continue. At the end of the day, you could see a picture where they were working here and all the neighborhood were doing the same thing, each one in their own door. And it was an amazing picture, you see. The thing is that if you decide to take a step of faith, in my opinion, that is a step of faith. I want to live a biblical principle, and this is my commitment. Now I see it, I understand the thing, and I'll do it, and I will allow God to join me in this experience, and it will happen. It will happen. You know, you and your family at least, and especially in things that can become a culture, family culture. So it means that it will be repeated or part of your life. Well, in my case, it was something like that. I took these principles, I taught them with some of my children in one side and conversations in the other side on the table and this and that, and we watch movies like, for instance, that one, and explain them what was a change of paradigms, and we began to talk about some of these principles, not all of them, because I don't want to overwhelm them with that, but those who were practical, we just did it, and they didn't show much opposition. But I'm conscious that in some families can be very conflictive things, you know, and I don't really know how to work that. Maybe it's based on something else. But the natural thing should be that you could be able to work with your family. You know, I can guarantee you something, that this process will be always kind of hard for you, because you are the one who are breaking, you know, the same chain, you know, of behavior. You're breaking it. That's fine, you know, it's going to cost you more. But once you involve your children, it will be natural for them. And that's the main, you know, price of that. But you don't even need to teach your children, for instance. It's just a matter of application. You know, for instance, I remember when one day we had one of the children. I don't remember if he was one of the child sponsorship kids who was sick in Guatemala. He had to go to the hospital and stay by himself because his mother couldn't go with him. You know, he was going to be alone the whole Sunday. There was no one, not even the staff, the basic staff. So we were, you know, kind of sad because the little child was going to be by himself. So I said to my children, kids, we are going to get ready this Sunday. We'll buy some chocolates, things like that, and some toys, and we'll spend the afternoon with this kid. And we did. And they had a nice and wonderful afternoon with him. Well, it was bored, you know, you watching them, you know, taking care of the kid. Okay, no more, you know. I went back home, and next Sunday, they were ready. Dad, what time are we going to the hospital? They wanted to go with Juanito again. And I was shocked, you know. Children, they don't mind. They happily take things if you are creative. And then you can make a teaching along the way, you know. You can talk about the principle, but in forms that they can understand it, and that's enough. And probably when they are your age, they will own their own theology about that, and maybe the best thing you could ever heard about that, because they lived it. Yeah, that's true. That's what I tell you, is that I know a lot of people who know about biblical worldview, but I guess that the problem is that they are not aware that they need this discipleship process. Because to me, that is a discipleship process. Probably is a peaceful one, the lightest one. There's no one above you who are you know, mentoring or monitoring. It would be nice if there were someone, but if you take a commitment, you know. But that's the part that we need to add to the thing. I mean, and it would be much better if you can come up with what discipleship means, because it fits very well. I mean, it explains you many things. It's not that I just put it there because it's convenient. No, that's true. I mean, That's why Jesus said, "Go and make disciples. Walk with them. I mean, teach them. I mean, and it was not a blackboard and a Bible class every day. It was just walking with them, walking towards the poor, helping the poor, teaching people, repentance. Everything was very practical. So. Look, I know this by experience more than by reading or an intellectual understanding of this. I started that way, but I know it by practice. And I know something that it may help you very much. Don't follow, if you look for definition of worldview and you go to the internet and you go to Darrow's books and things like that, you're going to find that they all agree in something. It says a belief system, or philosophical background from which a person operates, And I say, no, that's not the definition. That it will lead you astray. And most of the people who talk about biblical worldview know about biblical worldview only in theory. And they have wonderful definitions. To me, a biblical worldview, I have the definition here, but to me is a, let me read it to you, because I have it in English now, this one. I have another definition that, of course, a biblical worldview, a worldview has to do with a system, a belief system, or a philosophy, or something like that. It has to do with it. But to me, that's not the point. It says, a worldview is a subjective perception about the appearance of life and the universe.
Read it slower.
I can, okay, a subjective perception, about the appearance of life and the universe, shared by people with the same cultural upbringing. Okay, so I'm going to the natural phenomenon before saying anything about the philosophy and anything. The idea is that it is a subjective perception that I get when I grow in certain culture. So it's a problem of your mind because you were born with this group of people in this culture. So it's cultural. It's a phenomenon of your mind. Well, then it goes. It says, a worldview operates from a coherent system that is full of ideas or suppositions. It operates from a coherent. Coherent system that is full of ideas or suppositions. Well, you can use assumptions that have been deemed truthful either consciously or unconsciously through individual, group, and or generational experiences, and or generational experiences. So it's always a generational, it's an experience. You get those suppositions by experience. It's not a belief system that you learn. We made it because we wanted to give this, we wanted to move away from just the world of ideas, just like that, because if you read books, you don't get a biblical worldview just by reading,